So Tim, I'm more of a transactional leasing attorney. I would say your practice focuses on construction litigation, construction documents, things like that. So in leasing, in office leasing certainly, there's a lot of different ways the tenant can get their space built. Normally a new building is just a gray shell. It's got the outside walls and then nothing left. No interior walls, no flooring, no lights, nothing. So what are the different ways that that process can happen? Who does the work? The landlord's contractor, the tenant's contractor? Is the space already built out sometimes? What do you think?
So it's a little bit of all three of those options, right? I think most of what we're going to talk about is a situation where you negotiate a tenant improvement allowance and the tenant goes out and hires a contractor and a team to build it out, and then they get either reimbursed or get the landlord to pay for part or all of it.
Right.
But there's times that the landlord will just hand over the space turnkey to the tenant. There's other times that there's a tenant improvement allowance, but the landlord's actually the one that hires the forces to do it, and they use their preferred contract.
Right. Then you have to be careful as to what happens if the landlord exceeds that allowance, that cap. Who pays for the difference? How can the tenant control those cost overruns, things like that?
It's a little more difficult if the landlord's the one contracting with those parties because the tenant doesn't have the relationship, they haven't picked the contractor, they're not managing that party, and it can be a little tougher to manage. So I tend to like the tenant keeping the control contractually if they can keep it.
Yeah, I see that more too on the larger leases.
So the biggest part to me, and this is fresh in my mind from our experience that we just went through, we hired a project construction manager that ended up helping us pick our design team, helping us pick our contractor, helping us pick our specialty subs that we hired separately. And that was invaluable because then we're not sitting there managing construction all the time. We're practicing law instead and making decisions where we had to, but somebody that was more knowledgeable was actually managing both the procurement process and then dealing with change orders and pricing in particular. They're very helpful with that.
Yeah, I agree. That's critical. Most of my clients don't have real estate expertise, right? I have some clients that have offices throughout the country where they have a dedicated facilities team who actually knows this sort of stuff. But normally you're much better off, in my opinion, hiring a project manager who can interact with all those architects and contractors and the subcontractors and really make sure it gets done right and gets done on schedule.
Yeah,
And also to interact with the landlord, because they're going to be one involved in every step of the process. They have to improve the plans, and your improvements can't interfere with what the landlord's doing, especially if it's a new building.
So what you're describing with the bigger tenant situation, a big national government contractor, for example, they have the project management capability, but instead of hiring out for an outside vendor, they've actually got it internally in-house because they're using enough space facilities. They're going out and having enough tenant fit out to actually have a full-time staff person that can do that.
Although normally even they, typically with their large brokerage, the brokers often, the large national ones, have that expertise in-house. So that's not uncommon. For an additional fee, the tenant would also retain their broker's division that does that construction work.
And that's actually a hybrid of what we did, where the broker that we hired actually had the construction management capability in-house, and we ended up using them for that work.
Right.